Have you ever heard of a story so chilling, so dark, that it becomes a legend whispered through generations? Today, we're diving into one of Egypt's most infamous true crime cases, a tale that has been turned into plays, films, and TV series. This is the story of Raya and Sakina, two sisters who became the most notorious serial killers in Egyptian history. Our story begins in the early 20th century, in the bustling, chaotic port city of Alexandria. Egypt was under British occupation, and Alexandria was a melting pot of cultures, teeming with soldiers, sailors, merchants, and locals. It was a city of great wealth, but also extreme poverty. It's in this gritty, vibrant setting that our two main characters, Raya and Sakina, Ali Hammam, made their home. The sisters, along with their husbands Hasabala and Mohammada, Ebedilal, and two other accomplices, ran what appeared to be ordinary, albeit slightly seedy, businesses. They operated small, unlicensed brothels and bars out of rented houses in the Laban district, a poor neighborhood known for its crowded alleyways and rowdy atmosphere. Life was tough, and everyone was hustling to make a living. Raya, the elder sister, was seen as the mastermind, a tough, shrewd businesswoman. Sakina was her more impulsive, fiery younger sibling. Their husbands were their muscle and enforcers. Together, they were a formidable, if disreputable, family unit. Between 1919 and 1920, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. In Alexandria, women, mostly local women, who worked as prostitutes, or were known to carry their life savings in gold jewelry and cash, started disappearing. One by one, they would be seen entering one of Raya and Sakina's establishments, and then they would simply vanish. Families would report them missing, but in the chaos of the time, and with the low social status of the victims, the police initially didn't connect the dots. The disappearances were treated as isolated incidents. Perhaps the women had simply run off with a new lover or moved to another city. But the families of the missing women knew something was terribly wrong. They pleaded with the police, insisting that their loved ones would never just leave without a word. They pointed fingers at the sisters' houses, places their relatives were last seen. The police did conduct searches, but they found nothing. Raya and Sakina were cunning. They were always one step ahead, masters of deception who could charm and mislead the authorities with practiced ease. They'd claim the missing woman had left after a drink, arguing with a client, or had mentioned moving away. With no bodies and no concrete evidence, the police's hands were tied. The neighborhood, however, was buzzing with rumors. People whispered about the strange smells coming from the sisters' properties. Some complained about the constant digging and construction, dismissing it as routine repairs. The locals nicknamed the sisters' houses the houses of death. The fear was palpable, but no one could prove a thing. The gang was intimidating, and many were too scared to speak up. The disappearances continued, and the number of missing women grew. The breakthrough finally came in December 1920, and it was almost by accident. A landlord, wanting to install a water pipe in a house previously rented by Sakina, instructed a worker to dig up the floor. As the man dug, he hit something soft. Unearthing it, he made a horrifying discovery: the skeletal remains of a woman. The police were immediately called to the scene. This was the break they'd been waiting for. The investigation, which had been simmering for months, now exploded. The police, led by a determined officer, began a systematic excavation of all the properties Raya, Sakina, and their gang had rented over the past 2 years. What they uncovered was a house of horrors. Under the floorboards, buried beneath the tiles of one house after another, they found more, but each discovery was more gruesome than the last. The remains were often wrapped in blankets or mats, their mouths gagged. In total, the bodies of 17 women were unearthed from the shallow graves dug right inside their homes. The city of Alexandria was thrown into a state of shock and panic. The news spread like wildfire. The gruesome details of the murders dominated the headlines. How could this have happened? How could these women, these neighbors, be responsible for such atrocities? With the discovery of the bodies, the entire gang was arrested. The trial of Raya Sakina, their husbands, and their accomplices began in 1921. It was a media sensation, the first of its kind in Egypt. The courtroom was packed every day with journalists and a horrified public, all desperate to hear the details and see the faces of the monsters who had lived among them. The prosecution laid out the gang's brutal method. Their modus operandi was chillingly simple and effective. They would target women, often acquaintances or patrons of their bars, who they knew were carrying cash or wearing valuable gold jewelry. Sakina or Raya would befriend the victim, luring her back to one of their houses with promises of cheap liquor or a good time. Once inside, the trap was sprung. The gang would overpower the woman. One member would hold her legs, another her arms, while a third would place a wet cloth over her nose and mouth, suffocating her until she stopped breathing. It was a cold, calculated, and terrifyingly efficient process. After the murder, they would strip the victim of her valuables: gold bracelets, earrings, anklets, and any cash she had. The gold was their primary motive. Then, they would wait until the dead of night, pull up the floor tiles, dig a shallow grave, and bury the body right there in the house where they lived and worked. They would then replace the tiles, sometimes cementing them over, and continue with their lives as if nothing had happened, often with a new victim's body just inches beneath their feet. During the trial, the sisters turned on each other. Sakina, in a desperate attempt to save herself, confessed and implicated everyone else, painting Raya as the evil mastermind. Raya, in turn, denied everything, portraying herself as an innocent woman caught in her sister's web of deceit. Their husbands and accomplices also tried to shift the blame, but the evidence was overwhelming. The bodies, the testimonies of neighbors who had seen the victims, and the discovery of the victims' belongings in the gang's possession sealed their fate. One of the most powerful pieces of evidence came from Raya's young daughter. Badia, though just a child, she testified in court, providing harrowing details of what she had witnessed. She spoke of the women who would come to their house and never leave, of the strange nighttime activities, and the fear that permeated her childhood. Her testimony was a key factor in convincing the jury of her family's guilt. On May 16, 1921, the verdict was delivered. Raya, Sakina, their husbands Hasabala and Mohammed Abidi Elol, and 2 other male accomplices were found guilty of premeditated murder and sentenced to death. This was a landmark verdict. In Egypt, at the time, it was unprecedented for women to receive the death penalty, but the sheer brutality and scale of their crimes left the court with no other choice. In December 1921, Raya and Sakina Ali Hammam made history as the first women to be executed by the modern state of Egypt. They were hanged, one after the other, along with their male co-conspirators. To the very end, they reportedly showed little remorse. The story of Raya and Sakina has since become ingrained in Egyptian culture. Why? I think it's because it's more than just a true crime story. It speaks to a specific time and place of society grappling with poverty, foreign occupation, and social upheaval. The victims were marginalized women whose lives were considered disposable by some, and the killers were their neighbors, people who looked just like them. It was a betrayal of the most basic human trust. The case exposed the dark underbelly of a society in transition and forced people to confront the evil that could lurk behind a friendly face. The tale has been retold countless times, often with a dramatic flair, but the core facts remain a chilling reminder of one of the darkest chapters in Egyptian criminal history. It's a story of greed, desperation, and unimaginable cruelty that continues to fascinate and horrify us. A century later, thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the story of Raya and Sakina. If you found this story as compelling as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more true crime stories from around the world. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about this case? Until next time, stay safe.